The bright fluorescent lights of the ardent Aurora space station hummed with their usual monotony as Danny Steele wiped the sweat from his brow. He adjusted the vintage wrench in his calloused hand, a relic from Earth his grandfather had once used in a repair shop in Detroit. The ancient tool looked almost comically primitive next to the sleek, modern machinery that filled the repair bay, but as equals who bring something unique to the table. Jenkins nodded slowly, understanding the significance of what had transpired. They'll remember this, won't they? The day we stopped playing nice and demanded respect. Every civilization remembers the day the Deathworlders stopped being nice, Danny agreed with a wry smile. But what matters more is what we do with that respect once we've earned it. As they entered the workshop, Danny ran his hand over his grandfather's ancient toolbox, the same primitive tools that had saved an entire space station when the most advanced technology had failed. The irony wasn't lost on him. Several human engineers were already waiting inside, recruited from various sections of the station where their talents had been underutilized. Danny had offered them positions in his newly expanded operation, creating a network of human technical expertise that would span the entire station. "All right, team," Danny announced, clapping his hands together. "We've got systems to fix, improvements to make, and a lot of doubters to prove wrong. Let's get to work." Over the following weeks, Steele's workshop evolved from a small repair operation into a central hub of technical innovation on ardent Aurora. What began as a simple fight for survival had transformed into something far more significant, a statement about human ingenuity and determination. Word spread to other stations and outposts. Human technicians and engineers who had faced similar discrimination began standing up for their rights, citing the Aurora incident as precedent. Slowly but surely, the perception of humans throughout the Galactic Alliance began to shift. Administrator Irvin, to his credit, adapted to the new reality with surprising flexibility. While never becoming overtly friendly toward Danny, he developed a grudging respect for the human's abilities and began consulting him on major technical decisions affecting the station. 3 months after the crisis, Danny received a communication from Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. The message was brief but significant. The Council has approved the establishment of a Human Technical Advisory Committee with representatives from each major space installation. Your name heads the list of nominees. The Aquilian delegation was particularly insistent on your inclusion. That evening, as Danny shared the news with his friends at Murphy's Bar, Reeves raised his glass in a toast. To the day the Deathworlders stopped being nice and started being essential, Dr. Warren added. Jenkins, looking around at the mixed group of humans and alien allies who had gathered to celebrate, offered his own addition to solving problems that matter, whether anyone thanks us or not. Danny lifted his glass, thinking of how far they had come and the challenges that surely still lay ahead. For 15 years, humans had struggled to find their place among the stars, tolerated but rarely respected by the older civilizations of the Galactic Alliance. That era was ending. To proving our worth, Danny said, not with words or certificates, but with actions when they count the most. As glasses clinked around the table, Danny couldn't help but smile at the thought that echoed through his mind. Every civilization remembers the day the Deathworlders stopped being nice, because that was the day they started being themselves. It was exactly what he needed to fix the delicate adjustment mechanism on the Vectrian atmospheric recycler. "Jenkins, hand me the pressure gauge," Danny called out, his voice echoing in the cluttered workshop. His assistant, a lanky young man with perpetually disheveled hair, rummaged through the old metal toolbox before producing the requested item. "Here you go, boss. Think you can save it?" Danny grunted as he made one final adjustment. "There's nothing in this station I can't fix. These fancy new parts they keep importing break twice as often as the old ones." The Vectrian customer, a tall, willowy alien with translucent skin that revealed the pulsing of its 3 hearts, clicked its mandibles in what Danny had learned was their expression of relief. "Most grateful, human steel." Others said this unit was beyond repair. Would have cost 3 months' salary to replace. The alien's translator rendered its musical language into stilted English. Danny smiled, standing up to his full height, which still left him a foot shorter than the Vexrian. That's what Steele's workshop is for, fixing the unfixable. He gestured to the worn sign above the entrance, where the words human, engineering sector were stenciled in faded letters, with Steele's workshop emblazoned below in bold red. After the Vexrian had paid and departed, leaving behind a generous tip despite Danny's protests, Jenkins approached with a troubled expression. "What's eating you?" Danny asked, carefully returning his grandfather's wrench to its place of honor in the toolbox. Jenkins hesitated, heard some chatter at the commissary. Administration's pushing through new technical regulations. Word is they're targeting Earth-based operations specifically. Danny scoffed. Wouldn't be the first time. Ever since humans joined the Galactic Alliance, they've been looking for ways to keep us in our place. We're too unpredictable for their taste. This sounds different, Jenkins insisted. More organized. The new administrator, Irvin, he's been meeting with his nephew Korik. You know, the one with the fancy degree from the Centauri Technical Institute. Danny barely suppressed an eye roll. The Centauri Institute was known for its theoretical approach rather than practical application. Exactly the kind of credentials that impressed bureaucrats but meant little in the trenches of actual repair work. Before he could respond, the workshop's communication panel chimed. Danny wiped his hands on a rag and pressed the receive button. The screen flickered to life, revealing the pinched, disapproving face of a station official. Daniel Steele, proprietor of establishment Steele's Workshop, the official intoned, mandibles clicking in barely concealed distaste. "Just Danny. And yes, that's me. This is a formal notification that your business license has been suspended, effective immediately." Danny blinked, certain he had misheard. Suspended? On what grounds? The official's compound eyes glinted. Failure to comply with updated Technical Safety Regulation 47B, Section 12. Your facility has been deemed below modern technical standards and therefore poses a potential hazard to station security and resident safety. That's absurd. We've passed every inspection for the past 5 years, Danny protested, feeling his face flush with anger. I have the most reliable repair record on this level of the station. The new regulations were enacted yesterday. Inspection was conducted this morning while your establishment was closed. The findings are conclusive. The official's tone was flat, rehearsed. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. All appeals must be submitted in triplicate to Administration Level 5, Office of Technical Standards. The communication cut off abruptly, leaving Danny staring at a blank screen. Jenkins stood frozen behind him. They can't do this, Jenkins finally managed. Can they? Danny's hand tightened around the edge of the console. They just did. The next morning, Danny found himself in the sterile corridor of Administration Level 5, clutching a stack of hastily prepared appeal documents. The hallway buzzed with the efficient hum of bureaucracy. Station officials of various species moved purposefully between offices, barely sparing a glance for the human who stood out starkly among them. After 3 hours of being redirected from one office to another, Danny finally found himself outside the opulent door marked Administrator Irvin, Chief of Technical Standards and Commercial Regulation. He took a deep breath, knocked firmly, and entered without waiting for a response. The office was unnecessarily spacious, a statement of power in a station where every cubic foot was valuable. Administrator Irvin, a Procyon with sleek blue-gray fur and elongated ears, looked up from his console with obvious annoyance. Humans, he sighed, always ignoring proper protocols. You were supposed to wait to be announced. Standing beside Irvin's desk was another alien, younger, with the same Procyon features but with a more fashionable cut to his fur. He wore the insignia of a certified technical engineer prominently displayed on a collar that looked fresh from the fabricator. Administrator Irvin, Danny began, ignoring the jab. I'm here about the suspension of my business license. There's been a mistake. Irvin's ears twitched in what might have been amusement. No mistake, Mr. Steele. The regulations are quite clear. Your workshop relies on outdated methodologies, primitive earth tools, and lacks the proper certification for handling Class 3 technical emergencies. My primitive tools have been serving this station reliably for 8 years, Danny countered. And I've handled more Class 3 emergencies than anyone on your staff. Experience without certification is merely anecdotal, interrupted the younger Procyon. I'm Korik, by the way, technical director for the new Interstellar Engineering Center that will be opening next week, right where your quaint little shop currently stands. And there it was, the real reason behind his sudden license suspension. So this isn't about regulations at all, Danny said quietly. It's about clearing space for a connected insider. Irvin's expression hardened. Watch your accusations, human. The decision has been made through proper channels. The appeal process is available to you, as it is to any resident, but I should warn you, it typically takes 6 to 8 months for processing, by which time your nephew's fancy news center will be well established, Danny concluded. Second cousin, Cora corrected with a smirk. Though I understand humans have difficulty tracking relationships beyond the nuclear family. Danny felt his temper rising but forced himself to remain calm. Losing control would only reinforce the stereotype of volatile Deathworlders that many species already held about humans. I'll be filing my appeal, Danny said firmly. And I'll be contacting the human ambassador about this clear case of discriminatory practices. As is your right, Irvin replied smoothly. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a press conference to prepare for. The new Interstellar Engineering Center represents a significant upgrade in technological services for our station. As Danny left the office, the weight of reality settled on his shoulders. This wasn't just about his workshop. It was about the gradual, systematic marginalization of human businesses throughout the station. Steele's workshop was just the latest target. Back in the workshop, Danny found Jenkins and 2 other regular customers, a Torellian engineer and a Vexrian maintenance worker, waiting anxiously. No luck, Jenkins asked, though the answer was clear from Danny's expression. Worse than I thought, Danny replied, slumping into his worn chair. Administrator Irvin's cousin is opening a new engineering center. In our location, the Torellian engineer, Mox, clicked his mandibles in disgust. Not surprising. Same thing happened to the human-owned hydroponics shop on level 3 last month. Now it's an artisanal plant cultivation center run by some distant relation of a council member. What will you do? Asked the Vexrian, whose name was Ziv. Your services are essential to many of us who cannot afford the inflated prices of the official repair centers. Danny ran a hand through his hair. I don't know. Fight it through proper channels, I guess, but Irvin made it clear the appeal process would take months. This station's becoming impossible for humans, Jenkins muttered. Last week they randomly searched my quarters for the 3rd time this month. Said they were looking for illegal earth substances. The conversation was interrupted by the workshop's door sliding open. A burly human with a scarred face stepped in, his posture rigid with barely contained anger. Reeves, a former Earth military engineer who now worked freelance jobs around the station. Heard the news, Reeves growled. Not just you, Steele. Word is they're reviewing licenses for all human-owned technical businesses. Called it a safety audit. Danny cursed under his breath. It's coordinated. Damn right it is, Reeves agreed. And I say we don't take it lying down. Time to show these bureaucrats what happens when they push Deathworlders too far. What are you suggesting? Jenkins asked nervously. We can't afford trouble. They're just looking for excuses to restrict human presence on the station even further. Reeves snorted. Always following their rules. That's what got us here. They don't respect compliance. They see it as weakness. Danny stood up, feeling caught between the 2 approaches. Part of him agreed with Reeves. The peaceful, by-the-book approach clearly wasn't working. But Jenkins had a point too. Open conflict would only reinforce the stereotypes about aggressive humans that the administration seemed eager to exploit. Let's meet tonight at Murphy's, Danny suggested, referring to the human-owned bar that had become an unofficial gathering place for Earth residents. We need to talk this through with the others. If they're targeting all of us, we need a unified response. Later that evening, Murphy's bar was more crowded than usual. Word had spread quickly through the human community, and concerned faces filled every table. The owner, Katie Murphy, had closed the establishment to non-humans for the night, a rare occurrence that underscored the gravity of the situation. "They're systematically pushing us out," said Lisa Chun, who ran a small electronics repair shop on level 2. 3 inspections in 2 weeks, each more nitpicky than the last. Dr. Eliza Warren, the only human physician allowed to practice on the station, nodded grimly. "Medical Licensing Board suddenly requires updated certification for procedures I've been performing for years. When I applied, they said the next testing cycle isn't for 9 months. Reeves slammed his fist on the table. "This is a coordinated effort to remove human influence from a station. We need to take direct action." "Like what?" Jenkins challenged. "Sabotage? Violence? That's exactly what they expect from unstable Deathworlders. We'd be playing right into their hands." The debate continued, voices rising as various factions argued for resistance or compliance. Danny remained quiet, thoughts churning. Both approaches seemed doomed to fail. "What about a different angle?" he finally suggested, and the room gradually fell silent. "What if we make ourselves indispensable? Not just useful, but absolutely necessary to the station's operation." "We're already essential," Reeves countered. "Doesn't seem to matter to them." "No, I mean truly indispensable," Danny clarified. "The kind of essential where the station couldn't function without us, even for a day. If they want to push us out, let them see exactly what that would mean." Murmurs spread through the room as people considered the implications. "Are you suggesting some kind of work stoppage?" Dr. Warren asked cautiously. "Not exactly," Danny said, the plan forming as he spoke. "I'm thinking we continue working, harder than ever, in fact, but we start documenting everything. Every repair, every workaround, every case where human ingenuity solves a problem their certified technicians can't handle." Katie Murphy leaned forward. "And then what?" "Then we wait," Danny replied. "Because sooner or later, something's going to go wrong with their fancy new systems. And when it does, we'll be ready to prove our worth." The next morning, as Danny began the painful process of packing up his workshop, the station's information screens lit up with an announcement. Administrator Irvin and Korik stood before the sleek, redesigned facade of what had formerly been a row of human-owned businesses, now transformed into the Interstellar Engineering Center. "This represents the future of technical services on Ardent Aurora," Irvin was saying, his voice oozing with self-satisfaction. "State-of-the-art diagnostics, certified procedures, and the latest in galactic technology standards." Korik stepped forward, practically preening. "The days of jury-rigged repairs and primitive methodologies are behind us. Every system in this center is fully integrated with station operations, providing a seamless technical experience." The camera panned to show the gleaming new equipment, all bearing the insignia of the Galactic Alliance's Technical Standards Bureau. Danny recognized much of it as the same equipment he'd been repairing for years when it inevitably failed in actual field conditions. "They've never actually had to use any of that equipment in a real emergency," Jenkins muttered, watching the broadcast with Danny. "First power surge will fry half those circuits." As if on cue, the lights in the workshop flickered briefly. Danny frowned. Power fluctuations weren't uncommon on a station this size, but they were usually localized and quickly corrected. Over the next few days, as Danny continued dismantling his life's work, reports began trickling in of minor technical issues throughout the station. Environmental controls in some residential sections were running too cold. Gravity fluctuations were reported in cargo areas. Communications experienced random static bursts. Nothing catastrophic, but unusual in their frequency and spread. Jenkins, who had connections in station maintenance, confirmed that the issues seemed to coincide with the new systems integration being implemented by Korik's team. "They're rushing the installation," Jenkins explained during one of their regular meetings at Murphy's, "bypassing standard testing protocols to meet their grand opening deadline." Reeves snorted into his drink. Typical bureaucratic stupidity. Form over function. Danny remained quiet, listening to the growing list of complaints. His instincts told him something wasn't right with the new system architecture. The station had been built decades ago, with numerous modifications and upgrades over the years. Its systems were a complex patchwork that required intimate knowledge to navigate safely, knowledge that couldn't be acquired from technical manuals alone. Has anyone brought these concerns to administration? Danny finally asked. Dr. Warren laughed bitterly. I tried. Was told that temporary adjustments are normal during system upgrades and that everything is well within safety parameters. 4 days before Danny's final eviction deadline, the situation escalated dramatically. He was awakened in the middle of a night cycle by blaring alarms and flashing emergency lights. The station-wide communications system crackled to life. Attention all residents. This is a Level 2 technical emergency. We are experiencing power fluctuations in multiple sectors. Please remain in your quarters until further notice. Engineering teams are responding. Danny dressed quickly and made his way to his workshop, technically still his for another few days. He found Jenkins already there, monitoring the emergency channels on their communication console. It's bad, Jenkins said without preamble. Power grid destabilizing across 3 sectors. Environmental systems failing in the residential quadrant. Pressure variances in the outer hull segments. Casualties? Not yet, but it's only a matter of time. Oxygen levels dropping in Section 17B. That's where the Aquilian delegation is housed. They need higher oxygen concentration than most species. Danny swore under his breath. The Aquilians were a diplomatic mission. Any harm to them could have interstellar consequences. What's administration doing? Jenkins shook his head. Corrick's team is trying to isolate the cause, but they're struggling. These aren't isolated failures. It's a cascade effect. One system crashes, which overloads another, which crashes something else. Danny closed his eyes, visualizing the station's infrastructure. He knew exactly what was happening. The new integrated systems were creating feedback loops with the older infrastructure. Without proper isolation protocols, the entire station could eventually go dark. We need to get to the central control room, Danny decided. I know how to stop this, but we need direct access to the main systems. They'll never let us in, Jenkins protested. Especially not now. They might not have a choice. As they made their way through the corridors, the situation was clearly deteriorating. Emergency lighting flickered ominously, and in some sections, the artificial gravity wavered, causing momentary weightlessness that left unprepared residents floating helplessly until gravity reasserted itself. Near the central administration sector, they encountered a scene of barely controlled chaos. Station officials rushed between departments, their usual composure shattered. Through the transparent walls of the main control room, Danny could see Administrator Irvin gesticulating wildly while Corrick hunched over a console, his fur disheveled. 2 security officers blocked the entrance, but Danny approached with determined strides. I need to speak with Administrator Irvin, he stated firmly. I can help with the system's failure. The taller officer, a draconian with scales that shifted nervously between green and yellow, shook his head. No unauthorized personnel. Administrator's orders. From inside the control room came a shout as another console sparked dramatically. The lights throughout the entire corridor dimmed, then returned to half-strength. Listen, Danny pressed. I've been maintaining station systems for 8 years. I know how the old infrastructure interacts with new installations. What's happening is a cascading failure due to improper integration. The officers exchanged glances as the station trembled slightly beneath their feet. Wait here, the Draconian finally said, before disappearing inside the control room. Moments later, Administrator Irvin himself appeared at the door, his fur standing on end in what Danny recognized as the Procyon equivalent of extreme stress. Steele, Irvin acknowledged tightly. This is not the time for appeals or complaints. I'm not here for that, Danny replied evenly. I'm here because your station is about to suffer catastrophic systems failure, and I know how to prevent it. Before Irvin could respond, alarms shrieked from within the control room. Corrick's voice carried through the open door. Oxygen recyclers failing in quadrants 3 through 7. Radiation containment in the medical sector showing critical variance. Irvin's ears flattened against his head. What do you propose? Let me access the main systems. I need to manually override the integration protocols and establish emergency partitioning. That's exactly what we're trying, Irvin began, but was cut off by another alarm. Hull integrity compromised in Section 42E. Emergency bulkheads activated. Irvin's composure cracked. Fine, come in. But understand this, if you make things worse. I won't, Danny assured him, already moving past him into the control center. Jenkins followed close behind. The central control room was state-of-the-art, or had been, until the current crisis. Now half the screens displayed error messages or flashing warning symbols. Korik looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from desperation to outrage. What is he doing here? This is a restricted area. He's here to help, Irvin snapped. Unless you've suddenly discovered the solution. Korik's mouth opened and closed without sound. Danny ignored the exchange, moving directly to the main engineering console. His fingers flew across the interface, calling up system schematics that revealed exactly what he had feared. You've networked everything, he said, not bothering to hide his dismay. Old systems, new systems, all linked through the same control architecture without proper isolation barriers. It's the most efficient configuration, Korik defended weakly. All the current literature supports integrated system management. Maybe for brand new stations built from scratch, Danny retorted. Not for a 50-year-old patchwork like Aurora. These old systems have their own operational logic. You can't just force them into your framework. Another alarm blared. Radiation shielding failing in Section 29. Evacuate immediately. Danny cursed. Section 29 contained the station's primary water purification system. If it was contaminated, the entire station would face a slow death by dehydration. I need to get to the main junction box in Section 29, Danny announced. The computer controls aren't enough. We need manual override. Irvin blanched. Section 29 is experiencing dangerous radiation levels. The safety protocols will kill everyone on this station, Danny finished for him. I'm going. Jenkins, stay here and monitor the systems. I'll need your eyes on the readouts. It's suicide, Korik protested. The radiation will. Humans are from a death world, Danny cut him off. We could tolerate radiation levels that would kill most species. Not indefinitely, but long enough. This wasn't entirely accurate. Humans weren't significantly more radiation resistant than many species, but Danny was betting on the widespread misconception about human physiology. More importantly, he was betting on his own knowledge of the station's older systems, which included several maintenance tunnels that would allow him to reach the junction without maximum exposure. Irvin hesitated, then nodded sharply. Go, but I want something in return. Danny, already moving toward the exit, paused. This isn't a negotiation. The station is failing. Nevertheless, Irvin pressed, if you save us, I want your guarantee that you won't file discrimination claims against administration. This stays between us. Danny stared at the administrator in disbelief. Even now, with lives at stake, the bureaucrat was thinking about covering his own position. Counteroffer, Danny replied coldly. I save your station, and you reinstate all human business licenses that have been revoked in the last 3 months. Plus, you issue a public acknowledgement of the contribution of human technical expertise to station operations. Irvin's fur bristled. That's extortion. That's the price of expertise you discarded, Danny corrected. Decide quickly. The radiation levels are rising. After a moment of internal struggle visible in the twitching of his ears, Irvin nodded. Fine. Save the station, and you have my word. The journey to Section 29 was harrowing. Danny navigated through maintenance tunnels where the lighting had failed completely, guided only by the emergency phosphorescent strips along the floor. In some passages, he encountered pockets of escaping coolant gas that stung his eyes and throat. Twice, he had to force open emergency doors that had malfunctioned, using nothing but his own strength and a multi-purpose tool from his pocket. As he approached the radiation-affected area, his personal radiation meter began beeping insistently. He knew he had perhaps 20 minutes before exposure would cause serious damage, and another 10 before it became life-threatening. The main junction box was located behind a heavy access panel. As Danny worked to remove it, he could feel the hair on his arms standing up from the radiation permeating the area. His skin tingled unpleasantly, and a metallic taste filled his mouth. "I'm at the junction," he reported through his communicator. "Jenkins, what's the status on the primary cooling loop?" Jenkins's voice came through with static interference. "Critical. Temperature rising in the antimatter containment field. Estimating 15 minutes to catastrophic failure." Danny worked methodically despite the mounting pressure. With the panel removed, he confronted the complex array of circuits and power conduits that formed the physical heart of the station's older systems. Most modern engineers would be lost in this tangle of outdated technology, but Danny had learned from the human engineers who had helped build the original station. He identified the critical pathways that needed to be isolated from Coric's new integrated system. Using insulated tools from his utility belt, he began manually rewiring crucial connections, creating physical breaks in the feedback loops that were causing the cascading failures. "Radiation levels rising," Jenkins warned. "You need to get out of there in 5 minutes, max." Danny's hands were steady, but sweat poured down his face as he continued working. "Almost done. Tell me about the oxygen levels in the Aquilian sector. Critical, but stabilizing since you isolated the environmental controls. They've got maybe 30 minutes of breathable atmosphere left." "That'll be enough," Danny muttered, making one final connection. The moment the circuit closed, the emergency lights in the corridor brightened. Through his communicator, he heard cheers from the control room. "Primary systems responding," Jenkins exclaimed. "Radiation, shielding coming back online. Power stabilizing across all sectors." Danny slumped against the wall, suddenly aware of the nausea and dizziness that signaled significant radiation exposure. He'd pushed the limits of human endurance, and now his body was demanding payment. "Junction secure," he managed to report. "Systems should remain stable if you don't mess with them again." "I'm heading back." But as he tried to stand, his legs buckled beneath him. The radiation exposure had taken more of a toll than he'd anticipated. The room spun around him as darkness crept in from the edges of his vision. His last conscious thought was that at least he'd save the station, even if he might not be around to collect on Irvin's promise. Danny awoke to the sterile environment of the station's medical bay. The soft beeping of monitoring equipment told him he was alive, though the leaden feeling in his limbs suggested he wasn't entirely well. "The Deathworlder awakens," came a melodious voice from his right. Turning his head with effort, Danny found Dr. Nalera, the station's chief medical officer, studying his vital signs. The Aloran physician's bioluminescent skin pulsed with scientific interest. "How long?" Danny's voice was a rasp. 3 days, Nalera replied. "Your radiation exposure was severe. A Procyon would have died instantly. Even for a human, it was concerning." Danny tried to sit up but found himself too weak. "The station, fully functional, thanks to your intervention." The doctor's tone held newfound respect. "Though I understand Administrator Irvin has been rather displeased about the terms of your agreement." Before Danny could respond, the door to his room slid open. Jenkins entered, followed by Reeves, Dr. Warren, and, surprisingly, Administrator Irvin himself. "Steele," Irvin acknowledged stiffly. "Good to see you conscious." "I'm sure," Danny replied dryly. "Have you come to thank me, or to explain why you can't honor our agreement?" Irvin's ears twitched in irritation. "Actually, I've come to inform you that your business license has been reinstated, along with those of all other human proprietors affected by the recent regulatory adjustments." Jenkins grinned broadly. "Not just reinstated, upgraded. We're now classified as essential technical services, which comes with priority supply requisitions and reduced inspection frequency. The administrator has been most cooperative," Dr. Warren added with barely concealed satisfaction, "especially after the station's residents learned who really saved them from catastrophe." Reeves stepped forward, his scarred face split by an uncharacteristic smile. Turns out the environmental monitoring system recorded everything. Your conversation in the control room, the radiation levels you endured, all of it. Someone leaked the recordings to the station's information network. Danny raised an eyebrow at Jenkins, who suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. An unfortunate breach of security protocols, Irvin said tightly. But what's done is done. The public sentiment is overwhelmingly in favor of recognizing human contributions to station operations. Uncorrect, Danny asked. Irvin's fur rippled in the Procyon equivalent of a grimace. My second cousin has decided to pursue opportunities elsewhere. His integration approach has been deemed incompatible with Aurora's infrastructure needs. How diplomatic of you, Danny noted. Dr. Nalera interrupted. This conversation is taxing my patient. Administrator, if you've delivered your message, perhaps the rest could wait until Mr. Steele has recovered further. Irvin nodded sharply. Of course. Steele, we'll discuss the details of your reinstated operations once you're discharged. He turned to leave, then paused. And thank you for saving the station. The word seemed physically painful for him to pronounce. After Irvin departed, Danny's friends gathered closer to his bed. You should have seen it, Jenkins said excitedly. When the recording leaked, there was nearly a riot in the communal sectors. Non-humans were actually defending humans. The Vexrians organized a petition demanding your reinstatement. Even the Aquilian ambassador made a formal statement praising human technical intuition, Dr. Warren added. Said their delegation owes their lives to you specifically. Danny closed his eyes, feeling a complex mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. So we've won this round. More than that, Reeves said. We've changed the game. They can't ignore us anymore. 2 weeks later, fully recovered thanks to advanced medical technology and his own resilient physiology, Danny stood before his workshop. The old sign had been replaced with a new one, larger and more prominent. Human Engineering Sector, Steele's Workshop, with the official station emblem beside it. A small crowd had gathered for the reopening ceremony, an unprecedented event for a business at this level of the station. Among the onlookers were many of Danny's regular customers, both human and non-human, as well as several high-ranking station officials who seemed eager to be seen supporting the now-famous human engineer. Administrator Irvin stood stiffly beside Danny, clearly uncomfortable but determined to fulfill his obligation. At Danny's nod, the Procyon stepped forward to address the gathering. Today marks a new chapter in Ardent Aurora's technical operations, Irvin announced, his voice carrying through the public address system to be heard throughout the station. We recognize and celebrate the unique contributions of our human residents, particularly in the field of engineering and technical problem solving. Danny watched with hidden amusement as Irvin struggled through the prepared statement, acknowledging the invaluable practical expertise and creative adaptive solutions the humans brought to the station's operations. As Irvin continued, Danny surveyed the crowd. His gaze met those of other human business owners whose licenses had been restored. Lisa Chun from Electronics, Dr. Warren, Katie Murphy from the bar. Their expressions mirrored his own. Cautious triumph tinged with the knowledge that this victory, while significant, was just one step in a longer journey toward true equality within the Galactic Alliance. When Irvin finished his speech, he handed Danny a small crystalline object, the official marker of an essential service provider, a designation previously withheld from all human-owned businesses on the station. Thank you, Administrator, Danny said, accepting the marker. Then, raising his voice to address the crowd, Steele's Workshop is open for business to everyone on this station, regardless of species or origin. Because when systems fail and emergencies strike, what matters isn't protocol or paperwork. It's the ability to get the job done. Applause erupted, led enthusiastically by Jenkins and the other humans, but soon joined by many non-human residents as well. As the crowd began to disperse, a Vexrian approached Danny. It was Ziv, the maintenance worker who had been one of his regular customers. Most illuminating experience, this crisis, Ziv commented, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Many of us have revised our understanding of humans. How so? Danny asked, Before, we saw your species as paradoxical, technically capable yet primitive, peaceful yet potentially violent. We viewed your Deathworld origins as something to be wary of. The Vexrian's translucent skin shimmered with genuine emotion. Now we understand. Your harsh world didn't just make you resilient. It made you resourceful in ways our more forgiving homeworlds never required. Danny considered this for a moment. We're not just Deathworlders. We're problem solvers. Indeed, Ziv agreed. And perhaps that is why your kind face such resistance. Those who cannot solve problems often fear those who can, especially when the solutions expose their own inadequacies. As Ziv departed, Jenkins appeared at Danny's side. So, boss, what's next? We've got a backlog of repair requests already. Danny smiled, looking at the new sign above his workshop. We work, we build, we expand. And most importantly, he gestured toward the gathering of humans and supportive non-humans who were now mingling freely in the corridor. We build alliances. Because this station is just the beginning. The beginning of what? Jenkins asked. Of humans finding their place in the galaxy, Danny replied. Not as newcomers to be tolerated or Deathworlders to be feared, but